Hello and live from the infamous Births Pub, I'm Jeremy Taylor and welcome to this week's Wednesday Night Undress, the podcast that reaches into the wobbly places of the podcast's dare adventure. We don't claim to look at things scientifically, but we definitely have all the answers to your mysteries, vegetable, animal and mineral. We even know the kings and queens of England, the questions most political. In short, we can explain matters mathematical, physical and medical. We are, in fact, the only naked podcast you can undress to on a Wednesday night while wallowing in your bath. Yes, we have some very interesting questions today, all set by somebody who doesn't normally set the questions, so this is going to be cool. Kath, Fernando's with us, Jeremy's with us, Eva's with us, Jamie's with us, and Chris is with us. So we've got sort of
on the knobs.
And on the knobs.
And on the knobs, playing with his knobs, was Mr. Neil. Yes. So we have some interesting questions. And I thought what I might do a little differently today is I'm going to tell you what the questions are up front. Just to sort of, so you know what's coming. We're going to be looking at the Academy Awards. We're going to be looking at the Brown Jackson confirmation hearings. Biden's traveling to Brussels. And we're all saying, well, what should Biden do? But we thought, well, we've done that a number of times. What would you do right now if you were Putin? We also wanted to have a look at sports gambling. And also, if you were the owner of Merce, where we've been broadcasting now for a few months, what would you do to attract more customers? New drinks, food, games, entertainment, who knows? Let's start with the Academy Awards, which are taking place in a few days' time from when we're recording this. Have you, for example, watched any of the contenders? What are your predictions? And are you going to watch the ceremony? And for myself, I've watched one of them on Fast Forward. No, I couldn't bring myself to watch Belfast. It was too close to home.
Yeah.
But if you want to know what Belfast was really like in the Troubles, watch Belfast. And it'll give you the heebie-jeebies. For me, it was Don't Look Up.
Yes.
Naked Meryl Streep. I'm not going to get what happens at the end.
Meryl Streep.
But again, it's one of those things that's too close to home. I don't know what you guys. So that's the one I watched. What else have you watched, Chris?
I don't know if I've seen any of the Oscar contenders. I haven't really paid attention to the Oscars since, I don't know, last time I actually watched the Oscars was...
Star Wars.
No, actually, it was when I met my wife. She invited me over to watch the Oscars, and that wasn't that long ago.
Well, wait a second. Your first meeting with your wife was during the Academy Awards?
No. That was...
you were actually at the Academy Awards?
No, I wish I was, but... No, she asked me over. We'd been... actually, we met, and then she kind of disappeared for a while.
Oh.
And then
then you let her out of the basement.
She got back in touch with me March of the year after we met and invited me over to watch the Academy Awards.
So she didn't want anything to do with you for at least a year.
She took a job that was
she
was trying to sell insurance, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Your wife?
And traveling around, Kansas trying to sell insurance, which
romantic value of the Academy Awards for you and your family is big, and it feels like you should be commemorating every Academy Awards with a date and watching the ceremony, right?
No, watching the Academy Awards served its purpose. She became my wife, so I don't ever watch the Academy Awards ever again.
Or did you become her husband?
Well, that's also true.
That's a very good point.
I wonder which.
But award show like that really kind of are meaningless to me. I mean, there's been so many years that the Academy Awards seems to ignore movies that show up in January and February that are absolutely Oscar contenders, but never get any love because what wins the Oscars is basically the advertising campaign and all the movie media.
Yeah.
And usually there's always as they talk about, well, it's Oscar season, so all the big studios are releasing their Oscar contenders now in this season. And I'm like, well, what about that movie that came out in March that was really, really great? Mm-hmm. Shouldn't that one be a contender?
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen.
That's a good point.
Well, I'm with you, Chris. It's I find it a bit boring now to watch It's mostly about stuff that I haven't seen yet anyway, but I would watch it if they did one thing, and that's emulate our podcast and everybody was naked.
Yeah.
Everybody, the entire
That would make it much
audience,
more exciting.
all the people on the stage. I think that is something I would watch till I couldn't stand it any longer.
It's a good idea. We should start a petition on that.
Yeah. Naked Academy Awards.
Yeah, especially
Winner.
Meryl Streep.
Yes.
Meryl Streep should be there.
Okay, but the religious right wouldn't like it, would they, Fernando?
They don't like anything.
Well, who cares, right? I mean, it's a good start.
So,
Don't have
what
to
about
watch.
you, Fernando? Will you be paying rapt attention to the Academy Awards on Sunday?
I definitely gonna watch. It's one of those things I hate, but I can't miss.
Right.
really?
It's a big like and I always do like mind kind of bets what will be the votes will be. You know, almost like a gambling without any loss. But it's just a bunch of people kissing ass. It's like repugnant in many aspects, and I don't know. I like it. I watch some of the movies there. I think 007 gotta be there, right? The latest, the song at least is competing.
Yeah, the Billie Eilish song.
The documentary Attica almost started last night.
Yeah.
The Guillermo del Toro I watched halfway.
You didn't finish it? It was really good.
Can you believe I didn't? I mean, I was entertained, and then started getting too tired, so I'm gonna pick up later, and then I drop. But I will come back to that. But it's a guilty pleasure. It's like my not a reality show.
I
It's
don't want to know about your guilty. I've told you before about
that's one. It's one of those guilty pleasures. But
Just one of the many guilty pleasures.
I don't want to know about his
Yeah.
guilty pleasures. I don't think our listening audience wants to either. Jamie, have you paid any attention to this, to the Academy Awards?
I don't even know who's nominated for what.
I think they're mostly movies.
Are they movies?
Yeah.
Some directors.
There's some
and-
songs.
Oh,
So
yes.
where they get
yeah.
a big gold thing that they
There's
give
some
them?
animated shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Animated shorts, documentaries.
Oh, I like to wear those in the summer.
Animated
I
shorts.
They're breezy.
When I
Yeah.
first met my wife, she was telling me about Lawrence and being the home of basketball and all this stuff. And she goes, mind, it's not what it was. So I don't know anything about basketball at that point. I think we were still in England. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, they all wear long shorts now. They used to wear really short shorts. Then it
Yes.
was worth watching.
Well,
pervs.
You have
Not
a
if you're a-
smart wife.
not if you're a basketball
That's
player.
information straight from my mother.
Is it? Okay,
No, it was in the 70s when they wore like really tight shorts.
And cotton, right?
That's
It
when
was super
basketball
uncomfortable.
was good to watch.
It was horrible for the players because you get like
Breezier.
Moses
Confused.
Malone's package in your face when he's rebounding. You know, it's freaking nightmare.
Turn your head.
And then and then, but you know,
What about you, Eva?
Balls
You're an
all-
expert
balls
on
all
these
over the place.
academy
So-
things.
so we have a party that we go to every Academy Awards. We had a friend of ours who throws a party, so it's kind of a tradition. So that's one of the reasons I usually try to watch as many as I can. So I go there kind of informed, and we discuss the movies as they're getting nominated. They were nominated as they were receiving awards or losing awards, and this year, I think I've watched most of them. The big favorite is The Power of the Dog. The Power of the Dog, also I call it a power nap, because it's freaking unbearable to watch. It was about, 2 hours of nothing happening.
What was it about?
So it's directed and written by Jane Campion. I don't know if it's written, but it was directed by Jane Campion, who is a lady that directed The Piano about 30 years ago. Yeah, and it's basically the same movie. It's a woman, fish out of water. By the way of marriage, she goes to unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people, where it's not her. It's not her territory. It's not. She doesn't feel comfortable there. She has a child, just like in the piano, who also doesn't fit, and it's about hour and a half too long. So it's a story. The story, the story fits in 15 minutes really, and then it's all about atmosphere and landscapes and
What about the dog?
and well, the dog is kind of supposed to be a metaphor, but
The dog is really the young boy in a sense, although the Benedict Cumberbatch role is also a dog in a
Yes.
sense.
yeah,
And so there's also a very serious homoerotic undercurrent in that movie.
yeah,
I mean, the final, not really, the penultimate scene between Cumberbatch and the boy he's kind of come to take under his wing as an apprentice is, really powerful. I mean, Evo is right. It took me a while to get through it.
yeah. It wasn't easy.
But really, when you look at the whole movie as a whole, I think it's actually pretty powerful. I mean, you're right. You probably could have trimmed a bit out of it, and it would have been a much more kind of succinct movie. I think it would have been better. But I really enjoyed Cumberbatch. I thought I haven't seen him play evil, and he really played evil well in this movie. And not the over-the-top, whoa, I'm just going to take over the world. But like Evo said, this woman has come into my territory, and I have to defend it.
Yeah. And, we, just like in the piano, there was a fucking piano in this movie. There was a major character as well. And then Benedict Cumberbatch played an 18th century cowboy, which is a very bizarre.
Is that the one that he plays cowboy?
Yeah, and he was wearing chaps for the entire movie, which was kind of bizarre. And actual cowboys complained. They said, what the fuck? We don't wear chaps all the time. There's certain things that you do in life not wearing chaps, and Assless Chaps is a different story. That's Kath's Academy Awards you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But so
What's
that to me, it's okay. Jane Campion is a legend. Benedict Cumberbatch is a legend. I love Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst. Plemons didn't have much of a role, to tell you the truth. I think he's nominated for supporting actor. He was in the movie for 10 minutes and really kind of sleepwalked through it. He didn't have much of a range to work with for this role. Kirsten Dunst played a kind of an alcoholic, damsel in a depressive distress.
Sounds like a really cheery sort of.
It's not a cheerful movie. It's very slow. It unfolds very slowly. And not much happens almost through the entire movie, and it's definitely not
No
an
animated
uplifting.
characters, no fairy.
No
godmothers,
animated
no
shorts. There was nobody was wearing animated
It's
shorts.
not a happy ending.
Yeah, and so this one, I loved the movie that Jeremy mentioned, Don't Look Up. That's a social commentary on our time right now, and it's very poignant and it's very clever. It had its weak spots, but it was pretty good. The one that I watched just yesterday, and I watched it just because the Academy Awards are coming, and I wanted to have it in my register. I watched Coda. And CODA means Child of Deaf Parents. This is an acronym. This movie, I think, is going to win the Best Picture Academy Award over The Power of the Dog.
Everybody,
CODA. I think the movie is gaining momentum, even though it came out last winter, long time ago. But it was out of the public eye for a long time and slowly gained momentum until at the SAG Awards, just recently, it won Best Ensemble. And this is a very good indication that it has a chance to contest The Power of the Dog. Coda was a movie that Jamie also watched here, and it was a very sweet, very feel-good movie. the actress Emilia something, I've never seen her. She's a young girl, maybe a teenager. She did an incredible
Emilia Jones.
job. Emilia Jones. She did an incredible job. She learned sign language. She learned to sing for this movie. She had not sang before. She was in every scene almost, and she's not nominated for an Academy Award, which is absolutely shocking. I feel like if they could recast their votes right now, the Academy would have nominated her. The movie gained a lot of momentum recently. Chris said something that's very poignant and true. It's all about momentum. It's like very rarely a movie that came out last January or February, March, very rarely it becomes eligible. It has to be recent. It has to be a fall movie. It cannot be a blockbuster. It can't be that it just came out. It has to coincide with the marketing campaign, with all the politics behind the scenes. So, yeah, I think I've seen most of them. Belfast I didn't watch, but I've heard it was incredible, and Kenneth Branagh did an amazing job. It's really about his childhood, partly, but yeah, it addresses those topics that are close to your heart, Jeremy, and it's probably hard to watch.
I think people with Belfast, people don't understand how deep the hatred was. And they don't understand. It was described to me once by a guy called Warren Mitchell, who's Jewish and comes from the East End of London, and he was doing a show out there. And he tells a story about the most bombed hotel in Europe, the single hotel that's been bombed more than any other hotels in the whole of Europe in the last 100 years. Right. I think it's 8 times it's been demolished. It's called the Europa. And we've stayed there a number of times.
Oh, wow.
And as the story goes, there's an American tourist from New York who's been brought up in New York. And he's there working at the shipyard, visiting, getting some advice, giving advice and stuff like that to Harland and Wolff, where they built the Titanic. And so he's told, look, we've got a nice restaurant in the hotel and everything else. You do not go out for a walk on your own around the back of the hotel or anything like that. And he thought, I was born up in the middle of New York. She says, come on.
Yeah.
And so he walks out the front door about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, walks down the side, and he's out the back, and he suddenly feels something in his back. And he knows, coming from America, that there is a gun in his back. And this voice says, "You're Protestant or a Catholic?" And he thinks, quick.
I'm a Methodist.
Think quickly. and he says, "I'm Jewish." He says, "I'm Jewish."
Oh boy.
And the voice says, "You're a Protestant Jew or a Catholic Jew?" And that sort of explains what the psychology was like when we were there.
Oh my God.
Working. You didn't get into taxis. And security would say, if the car breaks down, you stay in the car. And it's real. And for people in America, that's like, it looks exactly the same as everywhere, downtown, wherever you live. So,
We were driven through one part of Belfast by a member of the assembly there, a friend of ours, and he had us lock our doors. He said, "There is no way we're going to go through here with car doors unlocked."
windows down.
It's just it.
Oh my gosh. Crazy. Well, the other movie that I watched was Nightmare Alley, which is the Guillermo del Toro movie. And that was an excellent movie. Guillermo del Toro, he will always be visually stunning. There are a few tricks that I was looking for, like the use of, we already talked about, the use of circular shapes in the movie, which he wanted to do. And Bradley Cooper for cast, you might want to watch it because he shows up completely naked, full frontal in the beginning of the movie, and that took guts because he is in a bathtub. Took guts for him because, let's just say, he's not let's just say the water was probably cold in the bathtub.
You mean he hasn't got a big willy?
Yeah, well, but
Thank you,
Is that what you're
Jeremy.
trying to say?
Thank you very
Jeremy's-
much.
He
That's
had
what
the
you're trying
George
to
from
say, isn't it?
Seinfeld problem.
But the movie was excellent, and it addressed something that is part of the American popular culture. Now I'm talking about the con man, the ever-present con man, the confidence man, and the kind of the willingness of the public of being conned.
And what movie was this again?
Nightmare Alley.
Okay.
And I think he did it because of Donald Trump. He decided to do it because he wanted to kind of subtly address the character of the con man that seems to be omnipresent in our history here in the United States. Did you talk about the Academy Awards, Fernando, yet, or?
Well, I did a little bit, and I mentioned that I watched that kind of halfway, and some of the other shows. Like, I mean, I don't have much to add, but guilty pleasure. I always sometimes disagree with their choices for some of what's, but I don't get at the same time. Like, why Batman is not there? And
Well,
includes.
that's interesting. I'd like to ask you, though, a question, and that is...
No, I ask why Batman is not there.
That's my question, really.
No,
Is why do they...
I asked.
He already answered. Yes.
He already did it.
But what I'm getting
Jimmy
at
wants to
is
elaborate.
the largest filmmaking operation in Hollywood is pornography.
Oh yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Yes.
So why isn't it there?
So why are there no porn films? They're all grown up.
They do have their own awards.
I
AVN,
know.
right?
I never heard, but perhaps there
You
is.
just looked
their
that
own-
up, did you? No, but more importantly, pornography. Why can't you have a porn film? But more importantly, why can't you have a blockbuster? Star Wars or Raise the Titanic. They might win technical awards,
Yeah.
but they're never going to win. John Wayne never won an Academy Award for one of his cowboy movies.
Yeah.
He
Which is
won
a shame
one-
on some
yeah.
of them.
And I remember the old boy, a few months before he died, sort of walking down the steps with his cowboy hat on, very ill, and everybody stood up, and he got his Academy
Lifetime
Award,
achievement,
like
yes.
Lifetime Achievement or something like that. But he never won the Oscar. Why is that? Do you think?
And Chaplin never won an Academy Award either. Charlie Chaplin. Well, it's because of snobism of the Academy. They're really snobby, and they're looking to award movies that they deem artistic. And so movies, for example, Dune was a huge success and blockbusters, and it's nominated for 6 Academy Awards, but they're all like in the technical category.
Oh, really? That's the mostly of.
Yeah, and it seems to be the case every time. They speculated that maybe Spider-Man will get nominated for screenplay or something, but this is, it's an ongoing problem. It seems that the members of the Academy feel like they will belittle their own artistic acumen, if they vote for a big blockbuster. So,
Well, talking of blockbusters,
yeah.
Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court have been ugly,
Yeah,
to say the least.
yeah.
What we're being
Not as
asked
ugly
is
as others, though.
true. Could she have addressed the GOP accusations effectively? Do you think she's the right choice for the position, Jamie? Jamie's putting her
Ketanji
gin and
Jackson.
tonic down, and she's thinking about the answer.
I've been working a lot this week, so haven't really been watching the
Okay, go back
news.
to the gin and tonic.
In general, yes, I think she's a good choice. I heard a couple of her answers related to some off-the-wall questions. I think it's a shit show, but it's always been a shit show, so I think it's just a televised shit show.
Yeah.
And it used to not be televised. So I think they always stand. I think they always ask ridiculous questions. The other side that is supporting it always does their stupid dog and pony show of giving the candidate a break. So they say their stupid shit show things. And at the end of the day, we should be looking at what was her career, how did she vote, because we know present and future behavior is based on past behavior.
I thought you had nothing to say, and you just exhausted the entire topic. There's
So
nothing
sorry.
left to say.
Chris.
I mean, first of all, I can say there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of qualified people in this country to be Supreme Court justices. So I think, yeah, she's the right person for the job, but, so are probably a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah.
I think that she's, I haven't listened to any of it other than, little snippets on blogs that I read. Because I just can't stand, not since the Clarence Thomas hearings that I listened to while I was, doing reports in college, did I realize that, oh my God, this is just about these people getting their voices on television. They don't care a rat's rear end about if this person is really going to be, a good Supreme Court justice. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, the fact that she's an African-American woman, absolutely happy about. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's taken this long for over 100 old white men in that position. It's finally good to have, another woman on the court, for sure.
One who didn't start crying about how much she liked beer.
And who actually has public defender experience.
Yeah.
Never, not one Supreme Court justice has ever defended someone in court, which I think is a tragedy.
Yeah.
Tragedy. Or travesty.
So let's be clear, they don't need
Well,
to
this,
defend.
yeah, and
It's all about corporations, the Supreme Court. It's not about you and I, buddy. So
well, it's worse than the fact that it's corporations. It's about more and more. To my mind, it's about white supremacy. I mean, the recent unsigned shadow docket, basically kicking out a Wisconsin state district because the logic basically seems to be because you tried to make the districts less racist, that is somehow now racist.
what's race against
These
white
people,
guys?
I mean, particularly from what I've read about Kavanaugh loves to have an opinion and come up with judicial ideas to support it. It looks like Comey Barrett just kind of follows along with what the conservative movement.
She's busy raising the
Or
children.
the
She
Bible.
doesn't have time to be reading the law.
Or the Bible.
Thomas, I'm not sure exactly what his deal is, but he's got a huge chip on his shoulder that he's been grinding
It's
for
called
years.
Jenny.
Yeah, I think it's worse than that. And Roberts is so wishy-washy that he's for this.
Have
but
you noticed how much Chief Justice Roberts looks like Coach Self?
Oh, I've never really
I've
paid
never
attention.
looked at
Interesting.
that one. No,
I got next time I'm going to look.
If you put them next to each other, they could be brothers.
Oh, I have
that's
to
not
Google
going to
that.
make me like him anymore. So.
Yeah.
Fernando, what think you about the confirmation hearings?
Well, I mean, I totally, with James' opinion, I think the show is kind of pathetic. Like, see the opposition making like bizarre, stupid questions. So far, much better than was the Brett Kavanaugh reality TV show of the student party and
Yes.
get drunk and
Or if you
Cry,
start off with
he
someone that's- If you
cry.
start off with someone that's not a criminal, it's less of a shit show.
yeah.
But it's still a shit show.
Right. No, totally. And I just heard like a little of the few bits today. It was pretty civilized, and of course the expectable of Republicans asking some super duper bullshit for Fox get some headlines and work with Tucker on a magic of whack subjects. But hopefully she'll take this and go through it. It's she deserves.
Yeah.
And why Batman wasn't nominated? You didn't answer that. You
He
took
can be
my
a Supreme Court
question.
justice.
You bring porn to the equation.
He is
What
not
else
going
he
to
meets
forgive you.
with? And then he shuffle everything and
Are you saying, my Brazilian friend, that Batman should be appointed to
The Supreme Court.
Yes.
Supreme Court?
no for the Oscar nomination.
Yes, no. No or yes?
Huh?
Oh, shush.
Okay, next.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Lindsey Graham, it was very obvious that what he was doing was for filming for future campaigns. He
Yeah.
had these two gorgeous women sat behind him, advisors, and he's spinning away.
It's his mom.
Well, maybe.
Makes him look less
And
gay.
the point is that Congress created the guidelines. So if the representatives don't like it, or the senators don't like it, they need to change the guidelines. It's all theatrics, it seems to me. And the interesting point about Ted Cruz,
Oh, God.
Please.
Cruz, I thought was hilarious. Cruz yelling at the airport, "Do you know who I am?"
Because he was late.
Because he was late.
Yeah, we know who you
And
are. Cancun, Ted Karen.
As somebody pointed out,
Freaking
the
asshole.
astonishing thing is that he thinks if they know who he is, they're going to treat him better.
I would.
Cancun Karen.
What do you think, Kath?
Cook him some food.
About what? The
Supreme
Come here
Supreme
to the
Court's-
basement.
Oh God, I think
Follow
that,
me.
It switched.
You're scaring me, Fernando.
The protagonist and antagonist switched. Now it's the Republican senators making complete asses of themselves. And in the last set of really hairy hearings,
Yeah.
Kavanaugh, it was the guy being interviewed who was being a complete ass, saying, "Well, I'm trying to ponder the meaning of the word." Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it was. Jeez.
I think she's done a pretty good job so far.
Yeah,
was that
I
was
agree
far.
with
That
Jeremy.
was far.
She's done a good
Yeah.
job. First of all, I want to point out that 2 or 3 years ago, before the pandemic, we had a discussion on this podcast about potential Supreme Court justices on the Democratic side, and I had discovered Ketanji Jackson back then. I had heard her name and knew that she was kind of on a list, and I didn't know much about her except that Ketanji Jackson is a kick-ass. Ketanji Legislative Action Jackson. A freaking awesome name for a Supreme Court justice or a superhero.
Or a man.
Ketanji Jackson. And yes,
She's apparently better qualified than any of the people already on the.
like Chris said, in the
Supreme
history
Court.
of the Supreme Court, there was never a defense attorney ever even nominated for a Supreme Court justice, which is unacceptable. It was all prosecutorial characters, lawyers, they're prosecutors or corporate attorneys, rich white people mostly. Now, all of the liberal justices on the court are going to be women if she gets confirmed. All 3 will be women, and that's a good thing.
And I would love to see the ladies' room when Comey Barrett gets in there and with 3 liberal women, and it's just
She has her record as a public defender. Obviously, she has done her job. She's defended people at Gitmo, and that's a huge talking point for the GOP. And she simply was doing her job. And not to mention that a lot of these people were tortured. And
Lindsey Graham.
yes,
What is Lindsey Graham's profession? Do you know?
nobody really knows.
Yes.
Is
I can
he a
tell you what
lawyer?
it is. Yes.
Yeah.
He's a military lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he knows probably more about military law than most.
Mm-hmm.
And that he's a genuine expert on the subject.
So is he saying
he's
that he would
pretending.
refuse to do the job that was assigned to him? If he
Effectively,
had
Yeah.
that is what he was saying.
Shoot.
Yeah, and then Ted Cruz brought up some book to illustrate the CRT, critical race theory, and it was a children's book where there was a baby in the book, and how to raise your baby not to be racist was the name of the book. And he asked Ketanji Jackson, he asked her, "Do you think babies are racists?" And showed her the book, and she's like, "I'm sorry, it makes no sense. I don't use the critical race theory in my work. It doesn't apply to my job."
And she's married.
Yeah.
She's
Never read the book. Has
Yeah.
nothing to
Do with it.
she's married to a white surgeon. And they've been together for 30 or 40 years. How long time. They have 2 kids together. her eldest daughter, I think, wrote to Obama, told Obama off, apparently, back in the day, for not selecting his mum, her mum, to be put forward for the Supreme Court, and explain why she thought mum would be really good at that.
Yeah,
She was
well,
well raised, right?
well, she's qualified. She did a good job to answer the original question. I think she did a very respectful. She didn't explode.
Yeah.
She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't, she just did. She treated every question with respect and was collected, addressed it, and didn't get upset, didn't get wired up. And I believe she did a good job considering how ridiculous and juvenile some of the questions were. Ted Cruz started his presentation by saying, "You will be treated here with respect." He said, and you will not be asked. We guarantee you that we will not be asking you about your dating habits or whether you like beer. And I feel like dating habits. The question there was about rape, not about about sexual assault, and not about dating habits. So it was really ridiculous. She kept it together. She did a good job. So I think she's on her way to be confirmed.
Okay,
That's
so
good.
I think so too, because it's going to be very difficult. One of the things I think people have to realize about Biden, you could accuse Biden of being old and doddery, but he's been a senator longer than most of them. And what he does first is he goes talk to all the senators. So he has a little list of what the Republican senators have said to him. And one of these days, someone like Biden is going to say, "Oh, well, actually, the other day when I was down in the Senator so-and-so said that he was going to support this. Now, I wonder why he isn't." And then talking of Biden, he's traveling to Brussels to
Yes.
supposedly build a coalition as the world is careening towards World War III. And we've been banging on the podcast about, when do you press the button and all that sort of thing. Trying to get people to bear in mind and realize what's going on. We're worrying about the Academy Awards, and there could well be a nuclear weapon going off in the middle of Europe any moment. Let's reverse the question from last week. What would you do right now if you were Putin? Fernando, what would you do right now if you were Putin?
Okay, I think I would get all the money I got with all the oligarchs being the biggest mobbing in history. Get all the money, call Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk and say, "Hey guys, how much?" And then put all the gold, all the money, all his oligarchs, and go to the moon and explore the moon because
I did not
because
expect.
there'll be a safe.
I didn't see where this was going.
So, and then we go from there and find the next move, to invade Earth again and take over. Because eventually the world will be the Soviet Union, the whole
I
world.
think you seriously ought to send that proposal to Putin. He might
I
actually
did,
consider
actually.
it. Good. Well done.
He didn't reply.
Yeah.
Actually, I think they'd help him out and not charge him.
Just,
Yeah, very likely.
somehow tie the moon to Russian history, and you'll
Yeah.
be able to get him some kind of idea that he needs to invade. So
They went there
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I read today in Times or the Telegraph or something that there is now a facility where you can send texts to telephone numbers in Russia.
Really?
Yeah. And the Russians can't do anything about it. They have to switch off all the cell phones in Russia to stop it happening.
It's the equivalent of spraying flyers during World War II to
Yeah.
get information to people.
Yeah.
Very good. That's good.
I think the problem with Putin is that Putin's a psychopath, and if he is a psychopath, it's all about control. He doesn't worry. Psychopaths don't worry. That word isn't in their world. And what I predict is not that he's going to go to the moon, but if he can't get what he wants, he's going to take steps to get what he wants. And my prediction is, I'm afraid, that he will use a small tactical nuclear weapon on somewhere like Mariupol. He will wipe out the city. he will also wipe out 500 or 1,000 Russian troops.
Yeah.
He will then go on Russian TV and said, NATO wasn't winning, and then they used a nuke on us. So I'm a really good guy. We've lost a lot of troops, but I don't want World War III. So what I'm going to say is that Zelensky and his team of Nazis surrender, and I won't use nuclear weapons. If they fail to surrender within 48 hours, I'm going to use a nuclear weapon. Basically turn it around and blame it all on NATO. That's what I think. And he will threaten to use a nuclear weapon, possibly on Poland, more likely on Finland.
I think the threats are good, but I think he's more likely to do the nasty bit with a chemical weapon, because he's already laid the groundwork for that by trying to claim that Ukraine has those. And
Yes.
But they want the
So
agriculture.
false flag operations,
They
what
want
you're
the agriculture. So I don't think they're going to use nuclear chemical weapons. They want to be able to use the agriculture. It's known as the breadbasket
would
of
only
Europe.
be a small part that would be.
You'd still, either one
Yeah.
would cause problems, yeah, but I think in the long term, the chemical would probably be less and easier to clean up than the nuke.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, he's already used chemical weapons many times on innocent people
Yeah.
around all over Europe, and killed people with chemical weapons. Novichok, we know that they developed a new chemical weapon. Novichok, he
Journalists.
used it in England.
Which is
and-
why he sits at one end of the table and has everybody else at the other end, because he knows that can be used
Except when he
against
met
himself.
with a bunch of Russian stewardesses, and then he was filmed in amongst them. But he was
Wow.
around a bunch of women, so he wasn't under threat.
Yeah, the
Sure.
Novichok didn't
Yeah.
work in England terribly well. It got one person.
Yeah.
But you
It
remember
made
that
sick other
I'm
people.
trying to help you guys with drinking tea. If you drink tea,
Yeah.
particularly PG Tips Typhoon or
Novichok
something like
doesn't
that, then
work.
it doesn't work.
It just
Oh, right.
neutralizes.
It's like
just,
being-
It's just
it's
that
like
the tea is so horrible that cancels
being
even the
inoculated
chemical
4
agent.
times.
You can't. The chemical agent is overwhelmed by the toxicity of the tea. So we've heard what Jeremy's.
So we've got
Yeah.
the moon,
Yeah.
nuclear. What about you, Eva?
Oh, speaking of the moon, that reminded me of an old joke that they were telling during communism. It's like the joke is that CIA went to the president, I think it was Jimmy Carter at the time, and told him that the Russians are painting the moon red. The Reds are painting the moon red. And they're spending a lot of money, and they're going to make it. It's going to be a huge propaganda move. And Jimmy Carter told him, let them paint it. Let them paint it. And they're like, well, it's already half red. It's like, let them paint. So finally, they spent all these resources and painted the moon red. And then Carter told them, now go and put a Coca-Cola sticker on it. But yeah. So, but we've heard Jeremy's master plan. If he was in Putin's shoes, and I'm genuinely disturbed and worried about Jeremy, and I sincerely hope that Putin doesn't listen to this podcast, because this is a freaking brilliant idea that you just gave him.
I have another brilliant idea for him.
Yeah.
If I were Putin, I would bow out at this moment when he's apparently threatening the whole world and just kill himself.
Well, yeah,
I think that's an
except-
excellent idea.
But remember, he's
yeah.
a psychopath,
Yeah.
so he doesn't think. He's not worried about what other people think. He's, at the beginning of this, they were all saying, what's the off-ramp?
Yeah,
He's not looking for an off-ramp.
Yeah.
They have finally, I think, got the message. What he wants is Ukraine.
yeah,
And if he can't have it, there will be no Ukraine.
yeah.
That's basically what this is
And
about.
Ukraine, of course, is only the first step. He wants everything back.
Yeah.
Plus some.
Yeah, like I said a couple of weeks ago, his ultimate goal is destabilization of the world. He wants democracies down because the stuff that we're doing is a threat to him. It's Ukraine was more about a functioning democracy on its border, inspiring people in Russia to say, "Hey, why don't we have that?"
I think one of the bigger questions about what's going to happen is what's China going to do about it? Are they going to help Putin, or are they going to
So-
decide that this is a existential problem for the world?
Well, so we had a new a world order for the last several decades, meaning that for millennia, for thousands of years, taking over your neighbor's territory was accepted. It was anticipated, not accepted.
You
It was
better
anticipated.
defend yourself, or
Yeah.
it's dog eat dog.
Exactly. If you want to invade a country and you have the means to do it, you do it. And you absorb territories, you usurp countries, you take over countries, you enslave the population, or you displace the population. That was the world order. For the last several decades, this changed. We had a world order in which, yes, there were civil wars. Civil wars were happening. But this concept that you can attack a neighboring country and take over its territory was deemed, it was unwritten, but it was deemed impossible. And so I'm worried that this is now going to become the new normal, that he set a precedent. And I'm worried about Taiwan. I'm worried about the Baltic republics. I'm worried about, the next step.
What?
Because if it's a precedent, if it becomes the new normal, there's no longer to stop the big dogs from just eating the smaller dogs around them.
Yeah. I'm worried about Alaska.
And that would be chaos.
Are you sending the salvo, watch out, Oklahoma, we're coming for you?
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay,
But,
just checking.
but I also, have you guys, you've heard about game theory, right? Game theory.
Yeah.
So, yeah, game theory builds mathematical models that help resolve a conflict situation between two or more players. So, you have, let's say, two opposing players, or three or four opposing players. And according to game theory, when the players are rational, when you have rational players, the outcomes of the game are somewhat predictable. And this was used during the Cold War, and it's used daily in business. Occasionally you reach this so-called prisoner's dilemma, where you have basically four possible outcomes, and sometimes you reach the Nash equilibrium, which is even more complicated. But basically, if you have rational players and you reach this prisoner dilemma equilibrium, everybody eventually loses unless somebody makes a compromise. But if you make a compromise, you're bound to lose anyway. So really, the things get interesting when one of the players is irrational. And there's a lot of he gains huge advantage, the irrational. So there's a lot of speculation right now in mathematical academic circles in the United States that Putin was doing this on purpose. The 30-foot table, the bizarre behavior, the speeches about nuclear weapon and all that stuff, that he is trying to portray himself as an irrational player, gain advantage in a prisoner's dilemma, and that way get the favorable outcome. When we had Trump as a president, he didn't have to pretend to be an irrational player. He was an irrational player. He was crazy.
Period.
The guy was insane, and it was obvious to everyone. And weirdly, we had advantage in this situation because nobody in the world knew what the fuck this crazy man is gonna do. And this actually, in a mathematical model, gives you a huge advantage. So
Putin's emulating Trump, who didn't actually do it on purpose.
Maybe.
I see that a little bit differently because I think Trump, rather than just being a crazy person, is more of a sycophant. He's the kind of person who likes to be the big man unless he's around other big men.
Yes.
And then he becomes a sycophant.
A little puppy, yeah.
If you look at some of the body language of Putin and Trump during their first few meetings, it was fairly obvious that Trump was getting taken to the woodshed.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Putin didn't do anything because he wanted to keep Trump in power because he was hoping that he would
exit NATO.
Would exit NATO in his second term, and basically Putin thought he could just drive into Ukraine. There wouldn't be any
He knew very
problems.
well they owned Trump.
There
More
was
and more about that is coming out.
Do you remember, Jeremy, the meeting in Helsinki between Putin and Trump when Trump kicked out? No,
Oh,
Trump.
that
Well, he
was
probably
the-
did. Trump kicked out
Oh,
the
yeah.
American translator.
Yeah, there was
He
nobody,
was so
nobody there
afraid.
but two of them, right?
He was so afraid that whatever treasonous thing he did was going to
golden-
leak.
the golden,
He got rid of our translator, allowed the Russian translator, who probably now has disappeared, and so what was said in these 2 hours or whatever long meeting, I can only speculate, but his security advisor, Trump's security advisor, said a couple of weeks ago, said that Trump promised Putin he's going to exit NATO in his second term. And that's the reason Trump didn't attack Ukraine during Trump's mandate. So this is where we were. This is
Putin didn't.
yeah, Putin didn't.
Yep.
Yeah. So crazy stuff, and we are witnessing history, and I am really worried. Jeremy,
Oh.
God, I hope that Putin doesn't listen to you.
I never thought that I would actually die defending my country against fascists, but I have a real fear that that's what's going to happen. Either I'm going to be fighting, or I'm going to be taken out and shot or hung because I don't fit the whatever the ruling party line is that comes to power in this country. I mean, there was a frickin' U.S. senator who said that he would be willing to let the states decide in terms of interracial marriage.
Yeah.
It's. I think.
I mean,
a cartoon I saw recently, which I thought was very appropriate, was the proverbial large-bellied redneck watching the TV, and he said, "Well, Russia's always had you. Ukraine's always been part of Russia." And his wife's sitting next to him, reading a newspaper. And she doesn't drop the newspaper or anything. And she said, "Yeah, so was Alaska." And we did a thing, I can't remember whether it was on the podcast or on a radio show. I can't remember. I do so many of them, I don't remember which is which. Where we actually got some professional advice on what would happen if the Russians tried to take back Alaska. And it was fascinating, from people who actually know what they're talking about, as opposed to people sitting around a table like this. And they said, we would know they were coming. Probably we would have a few hours' notice, because they'd have to get a certain amount of troops, very like it would have been in the Second War. But the thing is that once they arrived, they would have experience of working in those in the snow and the cold and everything else. But the Alaskans wouldn't like it. Mm-hmm. And all the Alaskans have got guns.
Yep.
And that is where that would be the time. Just as it's starting to happen, even if they landed, the Canadians would get in the way to give America enough time to get there. And that's where you're going. I can almost see what you're going to say.
Where I'm going is, are you sure what television stations are playing in Alaska? Because there are parts of the country that only Fox News plays, because they don't have access to any other news station. And I was in Oklahoma this weekend at a funeral, and I was at the VFW, because that's where the funeral was held. And I sat at the bar after the funeral because it was my family member that passed away, and that was a shit show, so you got to drink after one of those things. But I was sitting around with veterans, and they were all commenting that communism is not so bad.
Wow.
So I just want to be clear. You're probably closer to your fears than you realize, because when you have veterans commenting,
I know exactly how close I am.
yeah, commenting that communism is not so bad, and why are we worried about what's occurring in Ukraine, and this is not such a bad movement that's occurring there, which are all the Fox News talking points. Because again, there are areas of this country that's the only news you get.
Yeah, just
so let's
just
be
wait.
clear.
I think a couple of points is Tucker Carlson's attorneys point out that if you believe Tucker Carlson, then you're a fool.
But who's listening to Tucker Carlson's attorneys? Not the people that are watching Fox News.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need you to be clear. Many people, the same people that supported Trump, are now touting the verbiage that Tucker Carlson is touting, and they're not listening to his attorneys.
Yeah.
It's enormous.
It's all true.
Well,
and
I like to point out, we'll move on to the next subject, which is about sports gambling. The preppers amongst us and the listeners, don't worry. You won't have to worry about whether your generator works, because the National Guard will come and take it away from you. And they will take all your cans of food that you've hidden. They will find it, because by the time they've been doing it for a week, they'll know all the decent hiding places in
And
all the
all
houses.
your bullets.
All your bullets. They'll take your weapons and your bullets and everything else. And if you get in the way of it, you're going to have to deal with a Humvee with a machine gun on the top of it. So I don't believe it's actually going to happen. But you never know. Let's move on to something a little bit more important. Fernando's looking at me. Have I forgotten you?
Is that
again?
about Batman?
Betting man.
betting man? Apparently, sports gambling is on the rise and is being further deregulated. Do you approve? Yes or no, and explain why. Yes, I do, but I can't comment because gambling is against my wife's religion. I am not allowed to do the $180 million.
no lotto cards for you?
She's actually gone at the moment.
She's
She's gone.
atheist. She's not religious.
Yes. Well, it's against her, whatever it is.
Conviction.
I'm not. Yes, her convictions. I'm not allowed. Oh, quick, she's coming back. So I said what I said. Not saying anything else. Absolutely. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's great. I have no problems with gambling. I've been to Vegas and I've gambled and I've, put up money on a NCAA bracket. Every now and again, I've put money on football games, basketball games, soccer games. Yeah, I know I've broken the law, but it happens.
It is illegal, isn't it? Is it illegal in America?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
technically
is.
speaking. Although if it's like between two friends, they're not really going to go after that all that much. I mean, I've heard from time to time they've busted work NCAA rings, but only if there's actually money involved. But if you've got problems with gambling, get some help. But
It
for all
is
of us who
weird,
can
isn't
handle
it,
it,
Evo, America, here we are in America, and we choose to live here. It's
Yeah.
our choice.
Yeah,
But if you go to England, there are betting shops.
yeah. Bulgaria too. Everywhere.
All over Europe. There are betting shops on street corners. And you go in and you place your bets on horse
every
races. And
Premier League game has advertising
anything
for betting.
you like, you can go do, but not in America, Kathleen.
I just was taking a little issue with that phrase. Well, if you can handle it, then do it. Everybody who gambles thinks they can handle it. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
And to have that, which quickly becomes an addiction in a lot of people, encouraged by government. I have issues with state lotteries. I have issues with state-sponsored gambling because it's a home wrecker.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So is alcohol, so are cigarettes. So you want those to be illegal? Yeah, sex is another terrible addiction.
Do you have state governments selling liquor to people?
Some do. I think is it Jersey that has state, or no, not Jersey. New Hampshire
New
has
Hampshire,
state.
the government sells
Jersey
the
used
liquor.
to have. Yeah.
Well, Utah too.
No, they tax it. They
No,
don't
there's-
sell it.
There is a state in this country that is it New Hampshire? I don't remember which one it is, but there is a state that is in control of selling liquor.
Okay, but in control of selling liquor doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they're doing
No,
the
you-
selling.
No, yeah, they're doing the selling.
Okay.
You go to a state liquor store to buy liquor.
Okay. That's
And
weird.
again,
I didn't know that.
I
Yeah.
don't
but
particularly have
no, it's why encourage gambling in people?
fantasize
Really?
sometimes
Why?
But
about
it's up to the individuals. If somebody drinks too much, that's on them. I agree.
Yes,
There-
I know.
there should
I
be-
didn't say make gambling illegal. I said why encourage it by the state?
But the question here is not about encouragement.
Yeah,
I
you're
fantasize
right.
sometimes
but
about.
I'm just
do
throwing
the,
in my dislike of state lotteries.
I do the state lottery, right, and I
But
win
it's a-
$180 million
Oh.
on the state lottery.
Not gonna
and then I
happen.
call Kath up at work and I say, hey, I
Sweetie,
think you
I'm
need
a
to.
mathematician. It's not going to happen.
You see, But what if it did?
It's still a
Somebody
probability.
has to win
it's
it.
not going to happen.
Somebody has
It
to win it.
could.
No, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Somebody.
There's a difference between a probability and a possibility.
There's a difference between a probability and an infinitesimally
just let
small
them run
probability.
through
Even
Infinitesimal.
do happen from time to time. Look at the frickin' universe.
Yeah.
No, it costs too much to try to get that little bit of infinitesimal probability.
I only ever
Uh-uh.
spend, maybe $20 tops every 6-8 months when the lottery gets to some $500
Yeah,
million.
and a lot of people spend a couple of $100 every
That's
month,
their-
and they can't afford it.
That's their problem. The state can set up programs to help people who have gambling addictions, who have alcohol addictions.
Which is
who
going to
have-
cost the state a heck of a lot more than it did, than
No.
they're actually gaining from it.
Helping these people recover actually turns them into functioning members of society, which then eventually increases the tax base. So it's to the state's advantage to take these problem people and
If they
turn
didn't
them
If that
encourage
is the
them to
case,
get
why don't they?
addicted in the first place,
if
they
that's
wouldn't
the
have to
case,
spend the damn money.
why don't they think of things like that? Do that with healthcare, for instance?
I
Eva, you
agree.
say something. Eva.
Well, it's true that it's being deregulated because of the emergence of the internet, and it is very, very hard to control gambling in the presence of the internet. And so at this point, we have many, many gambling institutions functioning on the World Wide Web, and even being advertised during major sporting events. You will see it on baseball diamonds on the walls. You will see it everywhere. Yeah. So it's very hard to control it. And I think they've pretty much given up on it. Like the federal government is close to just surrendering to it. For example, Las Vegas for decades was not allowed to have professional sports teams because of how intertwined the gambling industry is with any facet of life in Las Vegas. And so just in the last 5 years, we have a NFL team in Las Vegas. We have a hockey team, and many things can go wrong. And we have speculation of an NBA team moving to Las Vegas. So I think it's happening. It's inevitable. I am worried about it. I was watching Real Sports last night. HBO has this fantastic show called Real Sports, and in it, this was the major topic, the gambling right now in sports. And, excruciating stories were told. Forget about losing your money, losing your life. Suicides left and right of people who are so deep in debt and cannot stop that they're just putting an end to their life because they see it as the only exit, the only option to survive. In Europe,
TV show.
what TV show?
Wasn't there like a Netflix show? There's an option, right?
The
where I
one
can,
where,
you can
Chinese.
have a. what was- that,
Yes.
What?
You mean the Korean show?
that Korean show.
Oh yeah.
There's an option.
To the what was the name? That
Squid Games.
Squid Games.
Squid Games. But
There's an option.
Yeah, there.
Oh no,
it
that's
is-
not real.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Not yet.
Oh, it's
I'm sure
coming.
it's
Yeah.
coming. But yeah, it's horrible in Europe. Like
wars before we have something like the Squid Game.
Oh, I thought we were in the Squid Games. I'm sorry. I was
like Jeremy
watching
said, in Europe we
TV.
have these gambling shops everywhere where you gamble on sports, on sporting events, and they're completely legal. They are regulated by the government and the state, and they're getting the money. A lot of the money goes to developing youth sports, which is kind of, at least
And
that's good.
important to note, this is not like when we say legal, where it's sort of bordering on if illegal. These are national organisations. William Hill, I can think of, that's one. I probably could think of others if I stopped for a minute. These are perfectly ordinary operations.
Illegal. You have to charter a business and write up contracts and pay taxes, which is all ultimately being a good thing.
But bracketology in March, we are in March, and that's part of the reason I crafted this question is because right now, hundreds of millions of people are gambling on March Madness, and that's a tradition that has been kind of ignored by the government, even though it was illegal supposedly. But people are filling out their brackets and they're gambling money. They're putting money in it.
And if they win, they're not reporting it on
I have
taxes.
a question as a Brit.
Yeah.
And interestingly, there are three non-Americans sitting around this table and 3 Americans. So what is defined as gambling? Is it money? I mean, could you do it if you were, say, betting chocolates or cookies or something?
I gambled one of my wives once.
So that was back in the day.
It was just one.
I did
Saudi
gamble cookies
Arabia?
back as a kid.
In Saudi
we
Arabia.
didn't like. No, good question. I think it's money. It has to be something material. And
It can be goods.
another
Yeah, a house, a
Good.
car.
It can be goods.
another
Those
like
stories are
Wristwatch.
legendary.
avalanche of gambling started with the development of the fantasy leagues, because these didn't exist until relatively recently. But fantasy leagues have swept this country. Like
Yeah, all the jocks saw us playing D&D and they wanted a game of their own, so
Yeah.
they came up with fantasy leagues.
And then, Jeremy, there's also professionals like Billy Walters, professionals, mathematicians who developed algorithms, computer models that have basically eliminated the gambling element of this because they've gotten it so close to 100% predictability that it's no longer considered even gambling. So algorithms that calculate who's going to win.
Or
Amazingly,
spreads or,
spreads.
the other kinds of things that you bet on.
Amazingly, professionals, computer programmers and mathematicians are extremely accurate with this. So they calculate variables like, for example, how far the guest team has to travel, how many players are under the age of 25. So there's tons and tons of variables that are entered in this algorithm. Billy Walters was the first one, a famous Vegas gambling man, was the first one to use algorithm with his famous computer group. You guys need to Google this because it's insane story.
It, yeah.
Yeah, and but now there's many of those people. That's their job. Their profession is a professional.
Weren't they from MIT or something?
Yes,
or something
one of them,
like that.
One of them was like designing missiles for the government. That's the guy, Michael, who created the algorithm, and he joined in with Billy Walters, who's a professional gambler, and together they just destroyed Las Vegas and the gambling industry.
The people who are really smart and can have the computer power and so on are the ones who aren't going to do too badly.
Yeah.
The lottery tickets are being bought by the stupid. The casual sports gambling on your favorite team, whether it's going to win or not, is also by the stupid. The gambling in general is a tax on the stupid.
I hear about
It's entertainment. I mean, you spend how much money to go to a movie to buy popcorn and
and people who just see it as entertainment and do it every now and then, fine. But a lot of people want to try to recoup their losses one week by betting more the next.
I agree, and that's the problem there is the lack of any mental health, anything in this country. I mean, the idea that you should be able, that going to therapy to work on your brain is somehow less than going to the doctor to work on your body. I mean, it makes no sense at all. I mean, and that's the problem with problem gamblers or, any addiction at all. It's, we need to deal this with the mental health side as opposed to trying to ban this or, legislate this to the nth degree.
Yeah, we get the serotonin injection from a thrill. Like me and Jamie, we hit the casino every once in a while. Like we go and play the slot machines.
Hitting it's fine, but gambling there, that's different.
Yes, slot machines.
Right, we have one more question.
Yeah.
folks.
But
And,
We never got addicted.
Fernando,
is what I was trying
did
to
you
say.
want to say something? Again?
sure, a little bit. I mean,
all right. Okay.
just gambling. I think it's more less is better, but I mean, it is regarding some places like you always can have also a lot of illegal gambling, and even small things like it's unbelievable. Some locations like here, for example, there was a small kind of what kind of that machine? It's not like there was no.
One on
It was a slot like,
Oh,
but the
just
bar like
Oh, at the bar, in the bar, yeah.
you,
we had
it's sickening to see how much they're very like. I bet my guess is they're not making money. That's my guess. And looking the crowd and you see, when you're same place, same time, on the same location, the repetition. And I imagine
But
like it is on a
Fernando,
large scale. Yes.
That's a cash machine.
It wasn't an ATM. Well, it is an ATM with just
an ATM.
intaking. Yeah, intake.
They put their card in and they.
And there are variable schedules of reinforcement that we study, right? So there are reinforcement schedules that will cause you to have what we call a post-reinforcement pause. And there are reinforcement schedules that will cause you to continuously press the button or pull the one-arm jack or whatever. The strongest reinforcement schedule you can have is one that's variable, intermittent. You can't predict, right? I pull the arm 10 times, I get something, I wait. I pull the 10 times, I get something, 10 times, I get something. All slot machines and the game that was here are set up on a variable schedule of reinforcement, so you never know when you're going to hit the jackpot, if you will, or the small jackpot or the non-jackpot, but you get 10 coins, if you will, because when you hit it, you have what we call a post-reinforcement pause. So if you get a bonus at work, there's often a post-reinforcement pause because you pause for a minute, you don't work as hard, and then you start working hard again to get your next bonus because next year you're up for a bonus or next quarter you're up for a bonus. The slot machines hit so intermittently that you just keep pushing the button.
It's more exciting than random as opposed to every 10. It just gets
Exactly.
a pattern, and you're like, oh, I'm doing the same pattern.
I'm doing the
blah,
pattern,
blah,
so I'm going
blah.
to stop and wait a minute because I'm going to have to pull that 10 more times to get it. So why do I need to be
But if it's random, I was like, maybe this time.
Exactly.
Maybe this
It's
time.
going to be this
maybe
time. It's this time. And so so that's the strongest reinforcement schedule to maintain your behavior. And so if I owned a slot machine or a casino, I would want it to be variable, intermittent, because it's going to maintain everybody's gambling behavior of pushing the button, pulling the arm, whatever the gambling behavior is.
That's why I
One
play
of the
craps when I
saddest
go to the
things
casino.
I have to say I've ever done in my broadcasting career was that the advertising department had us go out to the opening of the first week of a large casino that had just opened.
Oh, that's depressing.
And I won't say where or who it was, but
Where was
anyway, we went out. So we went out and we did the morning show, 3 hours from this casino, and for the foyer of this casino, and then I got a tour around. They were going to give us lunch or something, and we had a walk around, and there were all these folk, seniors,
Smoking.
On their oxygen tank.
That's me 10 years after.
on exactly, they had a fag dangling out of their mouth, oxygen tank, and
They got a free trip there on the bus from the town they came from.
I just couldn't believe it. Last question tonight. If you were the owner of this bar, we've been broadcasting here with the new ownership for 3 or 4 months. Is there anything that we would do, that one could do, to attract more customers?
I think Kath should go first.
Yeah, what do you think, Kathleen?
To attract customers here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, to the new.
Oh, golly. Turn the heat on now and then.
Maybe a Chippendales night?
Okay.
Yeah.
Some
that would
1970s basketball players.
that would benefit with some
Bending
extra heat
over
in
long
it
as
too.
there's
up off the floor.
Yeah, they won't come as long as there's no heat.
That's true.
No.
You're right.
But for you, more interesting if there's no heat.
Really?
Possibly.
No.
Maybe
No,
not.
no.
I don't know.
We like
I don't
the
think
heat.
so.
We like to bring the heat.
Oh,
Yeah.
bring the heat on.
Bring the
Right.
heat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those
Fernando.
male bodies are a lot sexier when they're all sweaty.
Well,
Right.
you need like some slot machines,
Slot machines.
Slot
yeah.
machines.
video
yeah.
poker.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah.
The craps table would be
A craps table. Yeah, yeah. Jamie.
Probably more TVs and a bit more advertising about
Yeah.
around
How about some
basketball,
live
football games.
entertainment? Anybody go for that?
Live
Yeah.
entertainment,
That's
Other
a
than
good
us?
idea.
Jamie.
Yeah.
In addition
Some
to it.
trivia. I love some live trivia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bring
Ah,
trivia
trivia
back.
good.
Bring trivia back.
Evo.
Yeah. So, first of all, I think the ownership is doing pretty well. And the first move they could do to attract more customers is basically get rid of us. You know,
But
this
we're
would
back.
be a cheap way to attract more customers. Get rid of us. But they did paint the ceiling tiles black,
Yeah.
which is our producer was pointing at the ceiling tiles, which was the number one step they needed to do to attract more customers. I think they did a good job with this. There are a few things that don't cost much money or really cost nothing that they can do. So recently I was thinking, we live in a progressive town, university town with a lot of liberal people. My guesstimate would be maybe 65-35. 65-35. So here's what I think. If you're a bar owner and you decide to play an opinion television news station, not a real news station, at all times
Well,
on the
there
TV.
goes our Wednesday nights at Murph's.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a great advice. That's gonna actually probably keep us here. But if you're gonna play an opinion television news station on TV and not real news, you're basically going to alienate. Goodness, alienate 65% of the population of this town. Don't do that. If you want to play news station on your TVs, play BBC, you know.
Oh yes, we like BBC.
You know,
A very good idea. Excellent.
find a news station.
NPR.
Yeah.
Find a news station. NPR is considered progressive. Find a news station that's neutral.
And provide decent.
And
24 is a good basic
Yeah.
12-hour news station.
yeah, there you go. Do not do something that potentially can immediately get rid of a lot of your customers. I want to say something very exciting, guys. The ownership of the bar traveled forward in time, listened to this podcast before it was recorded, and decided to bring trivia back. So there will be trivia here again, starting next week on a Sunday. Every week, every Sunday, hosted by our friend Andy Bob. And this will be happening every single Sunday. So that's a good thing. And also the other thing. Yeah.
What about the teams?
We'll
we always gonna have a
reconstitute the team. We'll come up with a team.
Put the band back together.
Put the band back together.
Blues Brothers all over again.
There you go. So
And
like you said,
what's the connection? Go on, just see how good you are.
with the Blues Brothers
Blues Brothers and the bar. Go on, you can get
and
there.
trivia and the band.
Bar, put the band back together. Blues Brothers.
Just tell us.
Murph. Yes. Okay.
Was a member of the band.
That's right.
Murph.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And
Interesting.
Jeremy brings it all back
I
home.
can't believe you remembered him. So,
Did not realize.
I always remember Donald Duck Dunn from that
Yeah.
movie as opposed to Murph.
so if you're gonna have a business also that is a lot like many other businesses in the same geographic area, you have to do something that the other businesses don't do. Like Chippendales, you said.
Naked,
Why
yeah.
not? This bar does a good job on Saturdays because it has a stand-up comedy open mic, something nobody else does here, and barely anyone in Kansas City does, not on a weekly basis. So people from Kansas City, Topeka, Lawrence, they congregate here every Saturday, and the place is packed to the rim because there's no other place where these stand-up comedians can perform for their friends or whatever. And so they do really good on Saturdays, Chippendales on Tuesdays, trivia on Sundays. podcast. If they get rid of us on Wednesdays, they get a lot of people here. You know, so
Not with Kath. You don't really quite need Chippendales. You could do short shorts and just drop things on the floor and have people bend over and pick them up.
Various fire stations come in and do a show kind of deal.
Firemen dance.
Maybe
the fire pole dance.
yeah, the hose dance is
We
called.
like that.
Dance.
Ladies and
Ladies and
gentlemen,
You would probably get a really
gentlemen,
nice mixed
you
crowd for
have
that,
been
too.
listening to another Wednesday Night Undressed. And it all remains for me, Jeremy Taylor, to say thanks for listening. Remember, all the 2020, 2021, and now some of the 2022 podcasts can be found for download on all the various Kofifi channels, including Facebook. Our producer tonight was Neil Rasmussen on his knobs. And the team tonight, Kath, Fernando, Jeremy, and Ivo, and Jamie, and Chris, and what's the name of the guy from Brazil? Fernando. And Jane, who turned up. She stood outside. She stood outside and waited till we'd finished.
Just don't understand.
Batman. We'll have some Batman questions next week. I can predict also, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that we are going to have famous railway journeys of Kansas, Missouri next week.
I hope he's not recording anymore. Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right. All right. Well, this is one of the rare podcasts where we actually learn stuff. Reinforcement schedule.